So you guys been asking, and now I'm delivering. Here's my complete comic book origin story. Hey comic book fans, welcome back to Comic Book Corner 2.0, and fans, you're back with me, Mike Spider Slayer, getting ready to bring you my comic book origin story. That's right, fans. You guys wanted to know, Mike, how did you truly start collecting comic books? And this video comes straight from the heels of my how to get into comic books video, and you guys wanted to know, my origin story, why I love comic books so much. So I'm bringing it to you. I finally had the time to do it. So here we go. All right. So when young Mike Spider Slayer was probably about 4 or 5 years old, right, my mom took me to see a reshowing of Star Wars. Now, for a lot of us out there, especially in our 30s and 40s, Star Wars was an introductory to a lot of things out there, to set the tone for what were things to come, right? And so I loved Star Wars. Star Wars is absolutely awesome to me. And when they showed that re-release, it was right before Empire Strikes Back came out. So I got into, science fiction and stuff like that due to Star Wars. And it kind of spawned off from there, right? I watched Transformers as a kid. I loved Spider-Man and his amazing friends, the old Hulk cartoons. So right away, I was in that geek culture right from a very young age, right? So as I got a little bit older, I always realized that in this shelving units that I had in my room, right, I had these comic books, and these comic books were always there. There was 2 stacks. There was a stack about this big and another stack about this big, right? And these comic books came from my uncle, who used to work at a comic book shop, and he just gave me comics. And some of these comics that he had were comics from his collection. And so he gave them to me, and they sat in this unit forever. And every once in a while, I'd pull them out, look at them, thought nothing of it. Like, it was some, Marvel Tales reprint of the first appearance of Captain Britain. There was the original appearances of Hobgoblin. There were old Star Wars issues like issue 25, issue 17, things like that. And so I had these in my collection forever, and I just looked at them. I loved looking at the pages for them, but never really thought anything of it, right? Until I was even older. I was probably in around 6th or 7th grade, and I had a friend that just moved into the neighborhood, and he loved to draw. And one day he started drawing in front of me, and I was like, oh man, that's really cool. I'm like, who are these guys? He goes, they're the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I'm like, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? I'm like, who are they, And he's like, they're comic books. I'm like, comic books? I'm like, I don't read comic books. He's like, I do, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are really popular. He's like, they wear bandanas, they got swords, they use nunchucks. I'm like, no way. And he's like, they got this evil bad guy by the name of Shredder. And I'm like, nuh-uh. And he's like, yeah. And he's like, they're violent. I'm like, violent comic books? That exists? And he's like, yeah. He's like, there's also this other character by the name of Boris the Bear who uses machine guns. He's like a Rambo. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yep. And there's Terminator comic books, Predator comic books. I'm like, no. He's like, yeah, absolutely. And he showed me these books. He had some old Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle books, probably like issue 3, issue 4, reprint of issue 2 or 1. And I was like really impressed. And he was a good artist too for his age. I'm like, that's awesome. So that set the tone for me to really dabble in this medium, right? So I went home, and I realized, well, I have a friend that has these books now, and we can, read with each other. We had our own little thing going on. And so I looked at all my books, I started reading them, and I love the Spider-Man ones. And really, I was like, well, now how can I get more? So every once in a while, I'd go to the shop with my friend, and he would buy them, but I didn't have any money, so I would be like, but it was cool to see him buy them, and we could read them together. Well, when I started earning allowance is when I started buying my comic books. So I would mow the lawn every week. I would pick up, my parents would say, oh, weed the yard, pick the weeds and pick up the leaves and all that other stuff. And they would give me $5 a week. $5 a week. At that time, you could buy a 75-cent or a dollar comic book. So you could get 4 or 5 books, right? So what I would do is I would get my allowance. I would drive myself to the Baseball Cards Plus store. That's what it was called, okay? And so I would ride my bike there, and I would go to the spinner rack. And they focused on cards and everything else, but they just had one spinner rack of comics. And there's where I bought my first owned book, which is Spider-Man 313, right? With the first appearance of the Lizard, all right? So I bought that. And I was like, man, that's awesome, you know? And I was like, man, that's so good. I love this. And then the Baseball Cards Plus became more of a comic shop because comics were hitting that boom. And so then I would go and they would start having new releases weekly. And then that's when I would start buying Spider-Man on a monthly basis, where Eric Larson was doing the artwork, and you would have the Return of the Sinister Six storyline. One summer I went to New Jersey, and my grandmother bought me some comics at the grocery store because I had nothing else to read. She bought me the Infinity Gauntlet. She bought me New Warriors, from what I remember, and those types of issues, okay? So anytime I would get comics at that point in my life, I would try to get them. And me and my friend and maybe a couple other friends would talk about these books, and we would have a good time. Back when I was in like a sophomore or junior in high school, I made my own comic books, my own Spider-Man version comic book. And that's how much I loved it, okay? And then as I got older, a little bit, like 18, 19, you know, you're a kid, you're basically adult at that time, and I kind of left comic books to the side. I would read some here and there, but I wasn't really collecting until a new shop opened. So a new shop opened in the late 90s, and I started a pull list. I collected Spawn and Youngblood, Savage Dragon, Spider-Man, of course, at that time. But comics were in rough shape, so I didn't like the stories as much. So I put it back down again until I was around 2006 or 7, okay? And I started collecting Spider-Man, Civil War, Original Sin, books like that. And then I really got into it, and what I did realize was I had no one else to talk to with, you know? So I missed that. So what I did was I started reviewing comic books on Comic Vine. That's how I really honestly got into reviewing comics. And I felt like reviewing them by typing them, I couldn't get my passion across. So what I did was I was like, oh, new YouTube, you know? YouTube is fairly new. I'm like, there can't be that many people talking about comic books on YouTube. So what happened was I wound up saying, well, what do I want to call my channel? And I called it Comic Book Corner, okay? The original Comic Book Corner. And my name is going to be Spider Slayer. And I based my name based off of my gamer tag from Xbox, and it's still that today. It's called Spider Slayer 20, and instead of an I, it's a 1. And so I was like, and it fits because I'm like, Spider Slayer is a comic book villain, right? I love Spider-Man, so I'm like, why not make it Spider Slayer, you know? So that's how the YouTube channel came to be. And everything about YouTube I did wrong, right? In the beginning, I put all kinds of content that you weren't supposed to put on there when it comes to music and stuff like that. So I got copyrights, and I couldn't get monetization and all that other stuff. But I still loved doing the videos, and the community that I found out here was amazing, even for that time when YouTube was still fairly new, right? And so I was like, well, now I got to start a new channel, and that's how Comic Book Corner 2.0 came to be. And now you have the channel before you, and I'm still trying to figure out YouTube in a way, the audience, who likes what, you know, things like that. Some videos work, some don't. I even have my own group channel, which is called Comic Frontline, where we do a live show every Tuesday night at 10 p.m. It's called Comic Book Weekly. And I do that with one of the people on there is Comic Uno. If you're not familiar with her, me and her met on Comic Vine back in like 2007. So we've been friends a long, long time. And and now the channel has evolved, and you people show some interest, and it's really great to finally show my passion to all of you out there. It's just a wonderful thing. I love comic books, and I think it shows on camera, and I love seeing the fans. When I see people that are watching me from either down the street or all the way from freaking Ireland and Australia and shit, that just like blows my mind. Whether I have 5 people, 500 people, 1,000 people watch a video, it's awesome. And if I can help one person out there, you know, make a decision on what comic books to buy, that is my ultimate goal. And again, will I collect comic books forever? That's still yet to be determined. I think it depends on technology, right? If physical copies go away when it comes to comic books, I think that's when you'll see me stop, you know, maybe doing YouTube. I don't know. The one thing that I will probably always try to collect, even if physical copies go away, is collecting Silver Age, Golden Age, and Bronze Age books. But I hope physical comics don't go away. I think it's great that we have digital because it makes it convenient, but there's nothing better than holding a comic book in your hand. You immerse yourself into the experience, and maybe that's just me being old because face it, as we get older, those are the things that we're used to. But a child, when they're born into the digital world, that's what they're used to, and they're not going to care for magazines and stuff like that. So I don't know, me, I just feel like when you pay for something, I like having it physically compared to digital. I don't feel like I own anything. I just feel like it's just on a screen and it's not worth the money to me, you know? So that's how I feel about that. But there you have it. There's kind of like my origin story on how I got into comics and to the point that I am today. So hopefully you guys really enjoyed this video. Again, support this channel, fans, by giving it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to hit that bell. And don't forget to check out any other content that's here on this channel. And don't forget to check out my live stream each and every Thursday around 1-ish, 1 o'clock, 1:15, called After the Poll. So fans, as always, thank you so much for watching. And this has been Comic Book Corner 2.0.